As I mentioned, your book takes us from the beginning to the end of the universe, including the end of Earth and life. This is distressing. Your book asks, quote, where then does that leave us? Where does that leave us?
Well, it's a big question, and one that, to understand the full answer, I think we'll have to back up a little bit at some point. But just to give the gist of my perspective, when you realize that everything that you care about, from anything on this planet, anything created on this planet, to our sun, to the other planets, to any structure that you see on a beautiful night sky, when you realize that all of that is going to disintegrate, it's going to fall apart. When you realize that, it focuses your attention on the utterly special, utterly wondrous moment in the cosmological sense through which we're living. There's a brief moment on the cosmic timeline when collections of particles can coalesce into creatures that can think and feel and look around and ask these kinds of questions. And that, to me, is where the beauty and the gratification and the reverence for being alive at all comes from. That recognition, which I think becomes most startling when you see it within this grand landscape of time beginning to end.
I like your word gratification. You say impermanence is the foundation of gratitude. Could you reflect on impermanence and what that does for you?
Well, I can talk both at a personal level and at a species wide level. I mean, we as a people, as a species, have long since valued permanence. We talk about etching things in stone. We talk about legacy for the future. And I think that comes down to our singular recognition of our own finitude, of our own mortality. I mean, there's a beautiful book that had a deep influence on me personally when I read it, a book by Ernest Becker called The Denial of Death. It won the Pulitzer Prize back in the 70s. Not that many people know about that book today.
I do.
You do. That's great. And that book opened my eyes to the fact that so much of what we do and so much of what we care about is in response to our understanding of how limited, how finite our lives actually are. And so when you take that into account, you recognize that it is in response to the fundamental impermanence of everything that we are driven to do so much of what we do. And of course, as individuals, we recognize that impermanence in many ways. Look, I lost my dad. I was fortunate to have him for 23 years, but I lost him at a relatively young age. He was a young man. I lost my mom in June from the virus, and these moments, these life moments that we all go through in one way or another. And I thank the heavens that be that I am alive to have witnessed the death of my parents, because the reverse would have been tragic. That would have been awful for them. I mean, the worst thing you can imagine for a parent is to lose a child. So I'm thankful that I'm able to experience and mourn the death of my own parents, but it is a wrenching experience. And it is one that, again, just hammers home this recognition of how fragile and how finite we are.